YASUKE is this animated series that debuted on Netflix this week, and I've been looking forward to it and just wanted to talk about it a little bit since I watched the whole thing pretty much first chance I got. I'm going to talk about it, but I'm going to try to avoid spoilers or any kind of specifics. And the reason I'm going to do that is I really want you to watch it, or at least consider watching it. So I'm going to give you a good idea what it feels like, but I'm not going to give you the specifics or the spoilers. I will talk about some of the characters, but I don't think I'm going to reveal any of the story. I thought there's a lot to say here, so I'm going to try to say it in a way that might catch your interest or might let you know it's not for you, but at the same time leaves your options open. And I've been curious about this show for a while because when I first saw it advertised to me on Netflix, I just kind of Googled the name to see what's up with it because it had cool looking art. And I found out that it's inspired by this real person, this guy from Mozambique that found his way to Japan via Italy, I think. Or at least he got there along with some Italian missionaries. And once he got to Japan, he became a samurai. He was in the court of Oda Nobunaga, and I knew this name from a Sega Genesis game. Actually, one of my friends back when I was in school had this game called Nobunaga's Ambition, and I played that a little bit, so I got a history lesson from Sega. Thank you, Sega. The show's only 6 episodes. Each episode's about half an hour, so it's really just like 3 hours of total watch time, so it makes for an easy afternoon watch if you're interested. And I do recommend tackling it in at least 3 episode chunks to start with. And the reason I say this is that it probably won't be what you expect right at first. So I think it takes a couple episodes to kind of get into the groove of the show. And it has this first story arc that takes about 3 episodes. So that would be a good way to judge if you want to stick with it or not. I wouldn't bail out before episode 3 if you started. Now I gotta admit, I was lost at first. I was totally lost when I started it, but it did grow on me pretty quickly. It opens with a battle scene with all these lasers or something. I didn't know, is this magic? Is this science fiction? It looks like lasers. You see this big magic spider web in the sky and some arrows fly through it, and then on the other side they're like lasers. And this is honestly your opening, so this isn't spoiling anything. I'm just letting you know what to expect, because I wasn't expecting this thing that looked like it was from Robotech or something for the opening of a samurai show. And there's definitely giant mechas in this battle that looks like it's an attack on a palace, probably Nobunaga's palace. So just know this going in. It is not a historical or a biographical film. This is a full-on comic book type story. It has sorcerers, monsters, robots, like I said, mecha. It has samurai, of course, and it also has mutants, like full-on X-Men type mutants in this show. There's astral projection, there's even a spider lady. Honestly, this show's got it all. And as I said before, it feels like a comic book story, and I think that makes sense because the guy who created this show, or the credited primary creator, LaShawn Thomas, well, he's worked on American comic books. I know the title that jumped out to me was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And he's also worked on animation for things like Superman, Batman, and the Green Lantern. Also worked on the Boondocks, which is a show I hadn't watched a lot, but what I've watched was pretty cool. And the animation studio that handled the animation is MAPPA. I don't know if I'm saying that the way that I'm supposed to. M-A-P-P-A, MAPPA. And that's a recognizable studio name. That's the studio that does Jujutsu Kaisen, which has been recommended to me, it feels like, at least 1 million times. And as far as the animation is concerned, there's really good character design. I mean, I like the way the characters look, especially the principal characters that we got. And we got quite a few, and I'll talk about some of them here in a bit. But I really like the character design. Like in a comic book page, I would say this is a character that would catch my attention. But the animation itself kind of feels like house style, you know, almost like standard animation, or sort of, I don't want to say boilerplate, but you know, it looks like industrial animation. It's the same kind of thing I said about Invincible. It's not a knock, it's just, you know, what I felt like when I saw it. It's very consistent all the way through. And you know, just to be truthful about it, I might not be real fair to animation right now because I've been watching Demon Slayer, saw the movie, watching the show now, doing this whole video series with my daughter, and it's probably not fair to hold up a whole lot to the animation in Demon Slayer. So, you know, maybe I'm just a little tainted because I've been taking in so much of one thing and this isn't quite like that. Not all fair comparison. I mean, it's above average. I like the animation in Demon Slayer better, but they're both good. And, you know, just trying to drive home the point. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I would like to share some of the vibes I got from the stories. Like that first story arc, the one I think, that's in the first 3 episodes, that you need to at least ride that out before you make up your mind to give up on the show or to stick with it. That gave me a little bit of a God loves, man kills, pretty famous X-Men story. So it gave me just a slight vibe. I mean, it's an original story. It's not, taken off from that and trying to just retell it in a different wrapper or anything. But it is giving me hints of that when I watch it. So if you're familiar with God loves, man kills, you might recognize what I'm talking about. Just general tones, that's all. Then after that, I get just a hint of Lone Wolf and Cub. For me, that's a compliment. I really like the Lone Wolf and Cub movies. I haven't read the manga, but I really like the movies that we've reviewed. Then as we get closer to the end, there's a splash of Doctor Strange. There's even a character that looks like Doctor Strange to me. I mean, maybe he doesn't to you, but kind of does to me. And we get some Doctor Strange stuff. And I would say there's even just a smidge, like the tiniest bit of Rambo in Yasuke, the character Yasuke. And when I say that, I'm talking like First Blood, like Rambo as depicted in the novel and in the first movie. Not necessarily the sequels and what most people probably think of as Rambo, because some people might think that's sort of a belittling comment to make, but if if you've seen First Blood or if you're familiar with the novel, that's actually a kind of a good comparison, a good compliment, particularly something from 40, almost 50 years ago. It's due a little echo in something more modern. Now there's this really cool group of mercenaries, and I'm not going to say what they do or how they play into the story, but I just want to tell you about the characters that make it up, because I think they're cool, I think it's neat. This will either pique your interest or maybe let you know this isn't for you. But this group of mercenaries, they have a werebear. There's this lady from Russia who's a werebear. Now, at first, I thought she was a werewolf, and somebody even calls her a wolf lady. But, watching all the episodes, she clearly is turning into a bear here. And she's from Russia, and, you think of werebears like Ursa Major from Marvel, and that Avenger, The Guardians, I think it was called, the Russian Avengers type movie. That's a trip to watch if you've ever seen it. So she's definitely a werebear. There's a sorcerer from Africa, so there's another African character in addition to Yasuke. And then there's this robot. And a robot that's part of the mercenaries. He's kind of sweet for a mercenary, though. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's lethal. But like his personality and the way he looks, he seems somewhere on the scale between Iron Giant and Baymax. You might look and watch it and totally disagree with me. That's just how my mind works. He seems somewhere in between those two with a bit more of a martial tone to him. And then there's this lady who's dressed kind of like Zoro, which is cool. I mean, dressed a lot like Zoro. Except instead of a sword, she fights with a scythe. She has this big scythe that she's fighting everybody else with. This is a cool character too. Don't know what her name is or what country she's from, but because she's dressed like Zoro, my limited knowledge of the world is going to make me think maybe she's Spanish. And this group of mercenaries, they make sort of either a good superhero team or a good supervillain team. I'm going to leave that ambiguous. And I thought maybe they would have a little bit of fun with that, and that's something they could work on in later seasons and stuff. But by the end of the show, I kind of changed my mind on that, but it's still fun to daydream about that around episode 4 or 5 out of the 6 that you get. And one villain, this is the God loves, man kills thing, so he's not the big bad. I'm keeping that kind of a secret. But there is one villain you get into, and he's this priest, and he wants to obtain this person and or thing or object or vague MacGuffin. I'm not going to reveal what it is, but he wants something that'll help him get control of the Catholic Church and therefore control of Europe. And pretty good sinister character there. I think it's fun to watch that. Maybe you don't find that interesting at all, so maybe that's a reason to avoid it if you feel that way, but he's a cool character also I wanted to mention. The music in this show is by a guy called Flying Lotus, and I'm not really familiar with his work, but I know he's done a lot. I'll say the music in the show is really synthy at times, a whole lot of synth chords in there, slow, drawn out, meandering. And for some reason that makes me feel uncomfortable. And I'm not saying the music's bad, there's something weird about me that makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't know, it sounds to me like maybe something from 35, 40 years ago, maybe something that I'm suppressing. Maybe I've got a suppressed memory where these synths make me feel uncomfortable. But it definitely has a retro feel to it. So you might like it, you might hate it. I'm not really much of a music critic, so I don't know what to say about it. But I'll say that you will definitely remember the music if you see it, particularly the theme song, the intro. Of course, it's not all synthy parts. They do have some stuff that worked really well for me, fit into the scene, like during some battles, there's a combination of what I would call more traditional music, some drums and battle music mixed in with a little bit of modern touches and flair, and I think that works really well. That didn't make me feel uncomfortable. I don't know why the synthy stuff makes me feel uncomfortable, guys. I've got a weird phobia. Synthophobia. A little bit of a criticism is there aren't many laughs to be had in this, because I really like a lot of comedy thrown in with the action and with the fantasy and stuff. Particularly, like I said, been watching Demon Slayer, which has a lot of laughs. But Yasuke, not really much laughs there, but there's plenty of action. You're gonna get sci-fi action. You're gonna get sword fights with lots and lots of blood. You get spurters like you would from a samurai movie. Like I said, Lone Wolf and Cub, those movies are so great and they have those ridiculous spurters. You get a little bit of that in animation here. You're gonna have some magic duels, so if you're into magic duels, that'll be a plus. If you don't like magic duels, maybe that'll be a little bit of a minus. But honestly, it's got the full action menu. It's even got, like fist fighting and wrestling a little bit, so it's got the full action menu for you. Overall, I would say the way I would describe it is it's like a solid origin story for Yasuke. I liked it well enough by the end, but I really think it paves the way for a lot of possibilities for future seasons. Now, I don't know if it'll find a huge audience. Like, I'm not good at predicting if it'll find a huge audience or not. Sometimes I'm surprised in both directions on that. But what I do think it'll find is a really loyal audience. And I think that loyal audience will be what it needs to have future seasons. So I do think we'll get more seasons if the people involved in making this are interested in more seasons. Solid. Like I said, I avoided spoilers because I think you should check it out. Maybe I've convinced you to at least watch those first 3 episodes. If you've already seen it, let me know what you think down in the comments. Tell me if you had any favorite characters, anything like that. Let me know if there's other stuff I should be watching and doing these little quick reviews I like to do. And if you haven't checked out the Demon Slayer videos, my daughter helps me with those because she knows a lot more about anime than I do. Check those out if you haven't. Anyway, that's all I got for now. Talk to you later.